After 7 months in the making and constant internal debates about the morality of this video, the fourth playstyle discussed in the How to Play and Defeat series is Stall. Despite Stall's dominance throughout most of Loomian Legacy's lifetime, recent meta shifts and the introduction of buffs to old and new Loomians has stalled the viability of this playstyle to a halt, as the same tricks and strategies that worked previously dulled to the point of inconsistency and lack of viability. However, Stall is still a viable and strong playstyle in this metagame, therefore its importance is recognized. In today's video, I'll be disassembling Loomian Legacy's most infamous playstyle, Stall. From learning the basic rules and general knowledge and the basics of team building to build effective Stall teams in the future and present, to the strategies to play this playstyle and ways to break Stall, today's video will be focusing on how to play and defeat Stall. Unlike other playstyles, Stall is the most simple yet boring strategy in the game due to battles lasting a long time. An important rule to know during these slow-paced matches is longevity. Your team's defensive core of Loomians must have their longevity secured and consistent throughout the match. While this is an obvious rule, it's the most important. The best way to keep up consistency is with Loomians that have access to Rejuvenate, Empathize, Slumber, Beast Slumber, Perch, and more recovery moves to come. While niche moves such as Soft Water do count as ways to keep consistency, they are far too inconsistent in keeping the Loomians healthy. The second rule to know is momentum. While this rule isn't a necessity and is a personal preference, your walls should have some form of momentum building, pressure, or damage to make up for your slow-paced strategy. While this strategy is generally focused on residual damage, having opportunities to set up damage is important, as many offensive Loomians in today's meta have X factors that make it very hard to revenge kill / deal with them in general. Walls can abuse the Loomians they can wall by setting up hazards, setting up damage, are examples of what I mean. Loomians such as Stratosaur, Obsidian, and Gargoyle Defense all have ways to take advantage of their matchups, since they either have setup for threatening damage or access to setup / hazard removal for future damage. The third rule is defensive cores. This rule is simple enough but is very important. This will be going more in depth in the synergy section, but for now, just know your defensive cores are what makes or breaks your team, and if you don't have the right walls, you will easily get destroyed. However, your defensive cores are nothing if you don't know the most important rule in this playstyle, and this is matchup knowledge. Knowing your walls can and cannot wall is very important in this metagame, since covering resistances and weaknesses are simply not enough to stop offense from plowing through. While there aren't any ways to immediately solve this problem, studying your wall's resistances and weaknesses, looking up guides and information on desired walls such as my HDC series, testing your teams out in the Coliseum, and asking for team building help in sourceful places such as the meta-analysis is the ways to go. The next section of this video is strategy, the game plan for most of your Stall matches. First off, let's start off with the early game. Stall can have different ways of starting the match, from setting up hazards for steady chip damage, throwing around statuses and bartering items to cripple Loomians, or getting a quick read with your Loomians to do whatever you need is necessary. While the early game of the match is usually the most uneventful, this is an essential part of the game, since this will be the few turns that you will have the opportunity to establish your presence with hazards and other forms of damage. If you cannot get these hazards up, then withering the opponent's Loomians away throughout the match will be a lot harder. By mid-game of the match, there will be obvious threats to your team that the opponent has. Focusing all your resources on taking out the threats that can sweep your team is the goal of this stage in the game. Not only will it be easier for you in the short and in the long run, but this will eliminate your opponent's ways of winning the match. Once their threats are gone, you will just have to slowly chip through your opponent's Loomians until they've exhausted all points in continuing. Because there are many types of walls in this game, it won't do you any good to explain every type, so synergy between walls is what will be discussed. In order to win in stall matchups, having a good defensive core is needed. The most simple kind of synergy is covering type weaknesses. Walls covering each other's weaknesses make your team naturally stronger to check the metagame's wall breakers and will naturally wall a lot of Loomians. Another thought to keep in mind is that walls need to have some way to block hazards from setting. If hazards are allowed on your side of the field, your walls will be withered down very easily and will find themselves needing to click rejuvenate and none other base power moves in order to stay alive, leaving the opportunity for your opponent to wall break. So in order to help remedy this, having walls with hazard removal such as burn up, tear down, regift abilities, gust, and mudslide are needed on your team. The second thing can be said for pivoting, as letting pivots free in the match will suffocate and limit your options in which Loomians to go into, while your opponent can continuously pivot out and go into a Loomian of their choice to prevent and pressure your team. Your walls having immunities to flash and flee and zip zap and fade away are all needed on all teams. Whether that would be from Loomians that have abilities or from Loomians that naturally provide immunities to their typing, this is a vital step in making a defensive core. A final comment to keep in mind is your walls matchups against the meta game's offensive threats and stall breakers. No matter the types and pivoting covered, there are always be offensive threats to break through. While there are no other ways for me to predict what will become good in the future metagames, there are outside sources of looking for data on what is currently being used. For competitive data, servers such as the Meta Analysis server have up-to-date data on what is currently being used in the metagame. For those without Discord accounts, I will be making videos on what's currently being used, so don't fret. For more casual players, keeping track of what you're facing in the Coliseum is always a good idea. While never consistent since usage, it doesn't always equate to viability in the casual Coliseum. This will be good for upcoming and updating your defensive cores. The final section of this video is counterplay. While one of the most simple ways to deal with stall is through building strong wall breaker cores, there is an unsung way to break through stall. This strategy is called stall breaking, a strategy composed of wider range of Loomians that either focus or have the ability to cripple walls through statuses, items, hazards, and more. While stall breakers haven't fully evolved to the point of other games like Pokemon, a lot of good and common Loomians have stall breaker attributes. The most accessible and simple method is slapdown users. This removes a wall's ability to take hits, as removing items such as heavy armor and heavy shields will cause a 20% reduction to their chosen defense. Removing pearls will revert a Loomian's matchup to a certain type to normal, and removing health amulets and milkshakes will remove a wall's form of recovery. This, in addition with a battle's natural way of chip damage, will stack the damage further, leaving walls more susceptible to being broken. Examples of good slapdown users are Vespratu, Yoursoul, Your Golem Defense, Your Snack, and Metatoad. While more uncommon but still rewarding to more seasoned PvPers, using Loomians with Provoke and Deja Vu to stop walls from setting up, healing, setting up hazards, and more support related moves can help you break these walls easier by giving you a window of a momentum to set up your own damage or swap into another Loomian for free. Loomians such as Deja Vu Ferroglyph and Provoke Garbantis and Wintrix are great examples of this. Ferroglyph can lock walls into some more moves and give Ferroglyph free setup or the opportunity to swap into a more suitable matchup, while Garbantis and Wintrix can stop their defensive answers from taking advantage of them with support moves. And finally, a more LL type way to stop stall is by building offensive cores. Offensive cores are more important for any type of team and can dictate how many walls you can break through. For most great offensive cores, using Loomians that can cover each other's defensive answers is what you need to look for. For example, Charonix is mainly stopped by metal types such as Valkyrie, Celesting, and Stratosaur. In order to take out these matchups, Charonix enlists the help of Halventic, a great electric type wall breaker that has the bulk to withstand these metal type attacks. This pairing isn't one-sided, however, as Charonix is great for destroying Halventic's main worries of Sidrigon, Barblax, and Ursnack. Another example of this is Wintrix and Ikazune. With the exception of Eleguana and Pyrolin, Ikazune pivots off its main answers such as Sunamor's Gargolem Defense and Venolin to bring in Wintrix, which can break all of these answers. So, overall, Stall is still a pretty good playstyle. While it isn't definitely not in the position it was a few metagames ago, it is still a solid playstyle that is admittedly worth using. And because of its worthwhile use, it's still a viable strategy and a useful one to know how to play and of course how to defeat. Metagames like this have evolved way too much, and there are honestly quite a bit of unhealthy Illumines in this metagame, but Stall is definitely not one of them. I'm not gonna argue about whether Stall is good or not, but I hope you guys learned quite a bit of things from this video, and I heavily suggest checking out the outside sources of stuff that I will be mentioning soon, such as the meta-analysis and other stuff such as my videos. Overall, I hope you guys learned a lot from this. I think this goes without saying, if you are one of those people that make fun of people for liking Stall and just overall just hating on them because they play the playstyle, then obviously there is something terribly and horribly wrong with you. I wish I kind of said this in my semi-stall How to Play and Defeat series, which is a long time ago, like after a bit of months from my Hyper Offense How to Play and Defeat series, which was my first one. But obviously hating people for what they use is pretty much unintolerable. You can hate the playstyle, sure, but don't hate the person because of that playstyle. Because at the end of the day, it's what they get their fun with, and if you disagree with the ways they get their fun, then of course, it's your opinion, yes. But don't try and bring others down for it. Alright, this is Conan Stoops, signing off and reminding you that Zulong is a dumpster fire.